Hi everyone, welcome back. Well, as you can see, looking over my shoulder, I've been quite busy in this last week. It's been a major effort to try and get things planted out, but my plans were thwarted, you could say, part way through the week because the really windy weather arrived, and we've had 2 atrocious days with gale force winds, the wind blowing from every direction, and I've just been chasing my tail trying to tie plants in, protect plants. A few things have bitten the dust, as you saw in the opening scenes. A branch on the young Victoria plum tree, a couple of brassicas, maybe a sweet corn or 2 as well. And I'm glad it's over because to make matters worse, the wind dries the soil out, and on the dug beds that's quite an issue. I've done a lot of watering as well in this last week because we've had about 11 weeks now without any water. So I'm going to give you a quick look around the site. We'll look at some of the jobs that I've done. We'll look at how some of the plants have bounced back from the frost that we had. We'll take a quick look inside the greenhouses as well because they are pretty much set up now and good to go. Okay, catch you in a bit. We're down at the bottom of the 4th plot and we're looking at the 2 raised beds with second early potatoes, Charlotte and Kestrel, and we're only 8 or 9 days away from the frost that we had, and well, the brown tops have now gone, and look what we've got lovely healthy tops again, nice and green, so pretty indestructible really if they're mostly under the soil. I just feel sorry for the people that have lost the potatoes that were in pots. The second bed, that's the same. Then I think, yeah, all but one, they're all through as well. You can see, looking up at the Sweet Williams in front of us, that I had to beat a hasty retreat from the planting out at one point and try and support these because they were virtually flat. We're looking in a northward direction at the moment, and normally, if I show you with my hand, this is west to that side, that's east, that's north, and this is south, and the prevailing wind comes from that side, it comes from the west. When we had the Arctic blast, it came from the north, but this last couple of days it's come predominantly from the south, and as you see between the 2nd and 3rd plot where I took the raspberries out and the fence, that's now open to the elements, and I kind of well, got a slap on the wrist for doing that because the southerly wind, just because it rises up as well, kind of just gusted straight up and took the flowers over, and even the Brussels sprouts in those 2 blue cloches over there, a couple of those were flattened as well, notwithstanding the protection that they got from the debris netting. So, but I think I've managed to limit the damage. On the 3rd plot here, you can see I've got a few more brassicas in as well, and I've also covered up the dwarf French beans that were coming through. These are a Borlotti dwarf French bean, and because these are not dug beds, I just press them in by hand every 2 or 3 inch. So there's quite a lot in there. There's probably about, I don't know, maybe 60 or 70 seeds or something, but they are slower to come through than the Stanley beans, which are just there. I'll show you those in a moment, but before I show you those, I'll just take a look here in this cloche, and we've got 5 Covina broccoli, and I think we've got 5 Primo 2. So what I'm trying to do this year is just sow, you know, a handful of each variety every couple of weeks, so that they don't all come at once. So you can see how I tried to fasten the Sweet Williams up. Just a few lats. These are from an old bed frame, but they've survived, but they were nearly flat, as I say, over in that direction. The dwarf bean Stanley, that's come through. They were pushed into the ground as well. So I've got 2 drills there actually. The same bean, this side and that side. They're coming through nicely. And the sweet corn, well, they're looking rather sorry for themselves. The frost damage was a little bit worse than I thought it was, and they've suffered as a result when they've come out. This one here that I showed in the opening scenes, I think the tender part of the plant inside the scroll of leaves was damaged by the frost as well, because it just bent straight over with the first wind. And some of the plants are okay, but they're already starting to lose the green colour being out here. And these canes have been moved 2 or 3 times as the wind changed direction, because it just wasn't supporting them. Some of them, as you can see, have really suffered with the frost, but hopefully they'll bounce back. These ones here, there are 3, they're going to be smaller. We might just get 1 cob off those. And I think I put about 39 in, or something like that. But they don't like the wind, that's for certain. And then we've got 5 rows of Brussels sprouts, and you can see looking through that there are 2 or 3 in there. If I just zoom in, here we go, towards the back end, you can see they've been flattened really. Some of them may come back, but 1 or 2 may not. One bit the dust just up here, and you can see it just there, just snapped off completely. So I uncovered the peas. They were covered mainly to protect them from the rabbits, and I've put some twigs in and made a bit of a cane and branch TP, but I didn't fasten the peas in because of the wind. I just left them flat, but these need to be held up and supported. I'm going to put some strings across, or some netting, but I've just left them for the time being until the weather improves. The second row of jaguar pea are doing nicely, and the third drill, they're coming through as well. But I have had to water a lot, and that's the other thing. As I mentioned earlier, we've had so little rain, just enough to wet the surface once in the last 11 weeks. And I think it might have been on Tuesday or Wednesday I spent 4 hours watering, which is a bit of a killer really. The main crop potatoes, they've come through, slow to come through though I have to say, but again a lack of rain. But the weeds have come through okay in the furrows, so they need to be removed. The onions are doing okay, but I've been watering these and you can see the effect of watering. I've been so busy watering and planting out that I've not had a chance to weed these yet. And you can see the bit in between where I walk that's not watered, because I generally water these with watering cans rather than hoses. Well, that's clear pretty much, but where it's been watered, look at the state of it. So as I say, this is the second plot, and this is the plot that's still dug. A nice potato there, rogue potato coming through, but all the onions are nice and healthy, and the overwintering onions are fattening up nicely, so I'll start and take a few of those in due course, because they don't store more than 4 weeks or so, 4 to 6 weeks. Now this is my lovely rhubarb, as was. I think I've taken about 160, 170 stalks of rhubarb, but there was still so much there, and a lot of the larger established stalks were starting to go rubbery and were starting to rot, and when the wind came it also flattened it as well. So I decided to rip it right back. I took maybe 20 stalks off, and I've taken those home, and they're in the freezer now, and we're having a nice rhubarb crumble today for lunch, for Sunday lunch. But I stripped it all back so that the plants could recover a little bit, because they've been in leaf since February, and we've been taking fruit since probably mid-March, and we've had no rain. And I don't water these as a rule, so you know, they've obviously taken a lot of the goodness out of the ground. So I wanted the plants to recover. If it doesn't rain in the next couple of weeks, I probably will give it a really heavy watering, and then it should bounce back, fill out, and then we'll be able to start taking rhubarb again, maybe in 3 to 4 weeks time. I took the potatoes out of the greenhouse in order to accommodate the tomatoes, and you saw that in the last update. And I think I've probably got about 13 pots here, a mixture of kestrel and Charlotte, sown at different times. Luckily they're quite protected by the greenhouse on the left and the shed on the right, and as I speak now the wind's blowing from the west, so you can see that they have taken a little bit of a battering. There might be a few branches that have been broken, but for the most part they seem to be okay, and I think the forecast is for the wind to drop during today, and then we've got nice warm weather in the coming week. We'll just take a quick look inside the greenhouses. Well, it's much nicer in here. It's nice and warm, not too warm because it's quite a cloudy day, but as you can see the first trusses are in flower on some of the tomato plants now. That's a pink brandywine there, and the orange Wellington here, that's in flower as well, and some of the cherries, the Sakura and the Sungold, they're flowering too. I put the canes in yesterday because it was too windy outside, so I thought I came in here for a bit of relief. So I put the canes in and tied the plants in, but I've not side shooted them as yet, but I'll do that in the next couple of days. I won't show you the other greenhouse up at the top by the barn because it's pretty much the same, but we will take a look at the long greenhouse on the fourth plot. But just before I show you that, I might as well, because I'm here next to the greenhouse we've just been in, I'll show you the leeks. I did these yesterday afternoon, and they've been well dibbed. A couple of the holes have been filled already by birds, as you can see, just there, digging for worms. And I use an old spade handle that's been sharpened, and it's about 15 inch long. And I push it into the hill to the handle, so the holes are about 12 inch deep, and you can see probably 2.5 inch in diameter. And the leeks were dropped in and the holes were filled with water, and then they've been left, and you can see the leeks are varying height. Some were a little bit smaller, but they were between about 14-15 inch and about 20 inch in height. And we've got 7 rows of 9, so that's 63. I'm quite pleased that that's done because it's quite a heavy job, because I had to dig this area about 9 foot by 13 foot first to dig the manure in that had been sat on top. You can see it's quite a rich soil, just like the soil that we put the onions into, because the manure was piled about 8 to 10 inch high. So yeah, really pleased about that. They're in, and that's another major job done. The trees are still standing, but you can see there's a damaged branch on the young Victoria plum there. Anyway, we'll go back to the long greenhouse. Right, so here we are on the fourth plot. This is the 16 feet by 8 feet greenhouse, and you can see, I showed you last time in the last update, all the tomatoes are in here as well. But I've got the canes in as well. It's a bit awkward to put wires across this part of the greenhouse because of the 2 doors there that access the grow room at the back. So I've got one plastic coated wire that runs from those doors all the way back to the gable end at the entrance. And because the plants are staggered, you can see I've angled the canes from each side to meet the wire at the top. So the canes will be tied in there. The same at the other side, as you can see. These plants are all doing really well too, and they're getting the flowers on. And that's worth making a note of that, really, that there's a right time to do things. When you prick out your seedlings the first time, when you pot them on, you need to make sure you've got your true leaves before you do that. Otherwise they're a little bit susceptible to damping off, and they're not easy to handle, they damage easily. And also when you plant them on into the final resting place as well, ideally you want them to have some flowers on. So I think the rule of thumb is when maybe a third to a half of your plants on your potting bench have got flowers, that's when you should pot them into the final pots. Having said that, that's a rule, and as we all know, sometimes you do things a little bit late or a little bit early when you've got the opportunity to do it. And as a result, sometimes your plants are a little bit yellow and a little bit deprived of nutrition. And often they've got the flowers by then, but sometimes you're a little bit early. And I potted these out just a couple of days before they came into flower. But and I fed them as well with the seaweed, a liquid seaweed fertiliser before I planted them. But they don't seem to have been knocked back, do they? They're all really healthy. Lots of nice green foliage, as there should be at this time of the year. They're in fresh compost, which should provide them with feed for about 5 weeks or so. And there is fish blood and bone in here as well, so yeah, we should be alright for about 5 or 6 weeks before we need to feed again. And as a rule, in case you wondered, I don't start to provide any comfrey feed or liquid feed until the second tomato sets on each plant. So that means when the actual tomato starts to form. You often read that you should start feeding as soon as your trusses come into flower. But if you've just put them into fresh compost, that's really not necessary. As I say, you should be good, even with basic compost, you should be good for about 3 or 4 weeks. And if we look in the back part of the greenhouse, you can see it's nice and green in here now. I've got 2 cucumbers at this side, 2 at this, 3 are fem spot, 1 is burpless. And then on top, and I've yet to put canes in these, I shall have to do that pretty sharpish because they grow quickly. I've got 4 piccolino, so these produce a lunch box sized cucumber. And a few peppers just here, and an aubergine, and a few remaining sweet corn as well. Just looking outside while we're here, you can see that the elephant garlic's doing well, although I did spot some flower spikes coming up yesterday. You can see them. I think if we just zoom in again, you might see them better. I think half the plants have got flower spikes, so they need to be removed. And then underneath the bench, I'm really pleased that the dahlias are doing well. We've 8 plants, which is a pity. We were due more, but the supplier let us down. But they all look healthy. There's one there, the second one. That one, the tubers weren't in great shape, and it's a little bit smaller. But I'm not going to put them out for a while yet. Maybe another week or 2. We'll see what the weather has in store for us. And then we've got the giant sunflowers and the dwarf sunflowers. And again, I'm hanging on to these for a while, but I do have to water them copiously because they're only in little pots. But they don't like the wind. They like it nice and warm. But we have got a nice warm week coming. So they might get put out this week, we'll see. So that's the long greenhouse. We're just outside the long greenhouse, and I just thought I'd show you the 13 by 5 foot bed with potatoes in it there through as well, all but a couple, and I think they're Pentland Javelin. And the first batch of brassicas, the Primo 2 and the broccoli, they're all doing well. They're growing on really nicely. And we'll finish off in the main working greenhouse, and it's quite lush and green in here now. We've had a bit of a change around, because if you remember, this bench had all the tomato plants on it, and now we've got the pak choi and salad leaf, the cut and come again leaf. Down here underneath we've got some swede, multi-sown swede, that are going to be planted out. The spring onions have done really well. These are the ready variety, and They're just a nice size to take now. I've been taking those every day. Then over on the right here, we've got some sweet pea, the zucchini, gherkins, and the butternut squash. Down on the floor we've got some marigolds that need to be planted out and some snowball turnip. But I just called a halt to the planting out this last day and a half. It's just been too windy. Some of the spare tomato plants have found their way into this greenhouse as well. We've got a couple of sun gold there at either side of the grapevine, and the grapevine's really suffered in this last week or two. The heat scorched its leaves, then the frost scorched its leaves and rather thinned out the foliage for me, although I still need to prune it. And here on the other side of the greenhouse we've got some salad leaf again, mixed red and green, and this is the frilly red symphony lettuce. And we've got some burpees golden just there, and then we've got some chard that was pricked out, some more cabbage, and some kohlrabi, and some more chard. And then down in the corner here, two more tomato plants at either side of the door, and then a few odds and sods down at the bottom here. Now, I had about 80 tomato plants, and I gave the neighbour over here, Jim, and his son, they had 16 tomato plants and 2 cucumber. So his polytunnel there, you can see it just there, is full of our tomato plants as well. And the paddock owners just above Jim, they're going to have a few of these tomato plants on the floor as well. So we've managed to use all 80 tomato plants. So I'm quite happy about that, no wastage there. Anyway, a little bit long-winded this one, but that's it again. Thanks for tuning in and watching this update. It's been a bit of a whirlwind tour, a little bit like the weather. It's starting to ease up a little bit now, but there's still a breeze, and it's overcast. At least I've not had to water today in the greenhouses, and that's a thing to remember as well. Don't be too eager to water just because you've got plants and it's nice to water them. If it's overcast and you've got your tomatoes and cucumbers, just let them be, and they don't really need it. Anyway, as I say, the weather's improving. With a bit of luck I'll be back down after lunch and we might get some of the brassicas that are left planted. And then it'll be back to the watering on Monday and Tuesday because we've got a heat wave coming. Okay, anyway, thanks again and take care. See you later. Bye.